So after Sly 2 came out and knocked everyone's socks off, I'm sure folks were thinking, well, that was pretty cool, but what next? And those questions would be answered in an unbelievable turnaround, hitting store shelves just 1 year later. It's amazing what you can put together when the PS3 is looming over the horizon, and for Sucker Punch, their swan song for the PS2 and Sly Cooper as a whole came with Sly 3: Honor Among Thieves. This was the end of the road for many Sly fans, but as I've mentioned time and time again, Sly 3 is where I got my start. I remember seeing commercials for it and later saw it in action around 2006-07. I was at my aunt's house and my cousins had the game and they were making their way through the second chapter. I had no idea what was going on, but I was drawn in by the characters and open world nature. Then I found out there were missions, and after playing for a while, things started to make more sense. I soon went back to earlier missions to get a grasp on the story, and when the adventure was wrapping up, I was already on board with this Cooper fellow and his band of misfits. Someone left a great comment on my Sly 2 video about my reverse approach to the series. They took notice of how I knew about spoilers in Sly 2's story going in, but how it gave me a new outlook on certain events, and I never thought of it that way. And yeah, after playing Sly 3, I knew where Sly and his friends were now, but I still wanted to go back and see how everything fit together. But whether this is your first Sly game or not, you might get thrown off at the start of the story. After Sly and a bunch of shadowy figures make their way through an island full of weird hybrid creatures, Sly comes across a terrifying mandrill man and is soon being crushed to death by one of his creations. In what may be his last moments, he recalls everything that led him to this current predicament, and the story is mainly told via flashback. A tale of brotherly bonds and family legacy, Sly must amass a group of the best thieves out there to locate the legendary Cooper Vault and uncover the secrets that lay within, hopefully before someone else does. On the surface, Sly 3 looks and plays pretty similar to the last game, but a lot of fine-tuning has been done here. I used to go on about Sly 2's colors and how they didn't look as nice as the other games, but that was when I played it on original hardware. Through the HD collection on a good TV, it's still the most muted of the trilogy, but comes out looking much nicer. Still, Sly 3 bumps up the saturation, making for a perfect mix of Sly 1 and 2's color schemes. The thing that makes itself the most apparent is Sly's cane. With each swing, it glows a bright yellow and leaves behind a little whoosh. I've always liked how that looked. When fighting enemies, there's also brighter hit flashes, and one big flash usually comes with the final blow. It adds just the right amount of oomph to combat, and the guards got tougher and smarter too. Flashlight guards take more hits to kill, even with Murray, and some guards can dodge or even block some attacks. Pickpocketing also saw a big upgrade. Last time only Sly could do this, and if you wanted to buy power-ups from ThiefNet, getting enough coins could be tricky, especially if you didn't go after overworld treasures. Still, you didn't need much to beat the game, and you can see I didn't even get a power bar until the second chapter. But here, most power-ups are cheaper, and Bentley and Murray can pickpocket too. When you multiply those glowing pockets by 3, it's a miracle I get anything done in this game. Murray's approach is quick and forward, and his Atlas strength power-up from Sly 2 is now a default move. Bentley's method is a little slower, but the face he makes when he nabs something totally makes up for that. He looks so mad. In the last game, I only got power-ups I felt were absolutely necessary, but here I was getting something every other mission just because I could. Sly's got so many new moves to toy around with, and the push attack is my personal favorite. Great for clearing large crowds or even keeping a boss from attacking you. Get good enough with it, the results can get pretty nuts. Even the slideshow bits are more engaging, and it's all because of one thing: backing music. The ones in Sly 2 had none, and sometimes it felt like watching paint dry. Maybe that was part of the joke, but that clicking between slides noise is burned into my memory. All they had to do was add music and the problem was solved. The music also helps get you pumped for the next set of jobs. Speaking of music, I found Sly 3's soundtrack much more memorable than Sly 2's. I may not be able to recite a whole track from memory, but it only takes me a second to recognize the tune from Australia or the Chinese palace grounds. Venice's fight theme is so cool in how it uses bits from the Barber of Seville overture, aka the song you heard in that one Bugs Bunny cartoon. And a Sly 3 fan isn't worth their salt if they don't know the tune to Bloodbath Bay. Oh, it makes me as jolly as a Roger. The main gameplay has also seen a bunch of new additions. I've said this in the past, but Sly 3 reminds me a lot of Spyro 3, Year of the Dragon. Both are the final games of a trilogy, fans pair it up with the second game and debate which is better. They have a character with a high IQ named Bentley, but when I think similarities, I think new playstyles. Sly 3 introduces several new characters with their own ways to play. Some are more fun than others, but none really outstay their welcome, and in the context of the story, everyone gets something important to do. The one play style I didn't like was Dimitri's, but it only shows up twice in the game, and the last time you do it, there's a decent boss fight at the end. Somewhere in the middle was Penelope's gadget missions. If I heard the words, "I can use my RC car," I knew I was in for a rough time. Its controls felt way too tight, especially when you had to be careful of your surroundings, but when I played them again, they weren't too bad. I wish Penelope herself was playable, though she too gets a decent boss fight. Playing as the Panda King was fun, and I liked using the Guru's powers to stay out of sight or bend enemies to my will. And last but not least is Carmelita, who's the most fleshed out of the newcomers. She's got the most diverse moveset and has several boss fights all to herself. She also shows up in almost every overworld, and there's even a Sly mission where you take control of her and get the chance to shoot Sly yourself. I mean, it's all part of a trick on Sly's end, but how fun is that? There's also segments where you have different sets of dialogue to advance the story, and these are really fun too. Even if I know the right answer ahead of time, it's more about getting through every option to see how characters react to each one, and no matter what order you tackle them, the conversations never sound clunky. There's also times where Sly wears different costumes and uses passwords to trick guards, and this all culminates with the pirate disguise and Sly's curse-off with Black Spot Pete. Coming up with ridiculous insults while making sure not to repeat anything just said, coupled with a time limit and Sly's pirate accent, this will forever be one of my favorite moments in the series. His flawless Italian accent is also a classic, and everyone I know loves the bit with one of Octavio's guards and how much he loves his mother's pasta sauce. Dude loves that sauce so much he wants to be buried in it, and I can't tell you why I think that's the funniest thing in the world, but it is! Sly 3 also trims a bit of the fat from Sly 2. In terms of the chapter setup, this game has 6 as opposed to Sly 2's 8, but there's more variety in the places you go and the faces you see. Most of Sly 2 had you in similar worlds for 2 chapters apiece, with a single boss overseeing them. Here, every chapter is completely different, and the villains are their own separate entities. The last 2 games had them connected through a gang, but now they're totally unrelated to each other, all doing something in their own corners of the world, and I like this smaller scale approach. And talk about memorable, this group of villains is my favorite in the series. Each one is full of personality, and just thinking about them, I can quote at least one thing they've said from memory. The obvious exception here is the Mask of Dark Earth, but it is responsible for some fun moments, I'll give it that. Back to the chapters themselves, they're also the longest of the trilogy. Sly 1's took me about an hour to beat, Sly 2's were 60 to 90 minutes, but even at my fastest, most of Sly 3's bordered around the 2-hour mark. I wouldn't recommend doing 2 chapters in one sitting. Just take your time and don't stress about doing as much as you can in an afternoon like I did for this marathon. For my favorite levels, Venice is a great introduction to Sly 3's setup for veterans and newcomers. There's extra details now, like chapters taking place over the course of a few days, and the time of day changes here too. I love that! Clue bottles and treasures are sadly absent, but overworlds now have traps you can use to get the drop on guards, whether for a quick escape or just for kicks. Some people aren't crazy about these, but I remember the first time I was in Venice, I spent hours just pressing buttons and seeing how things worked. And Don Octavio, no question, favorite villain in the game. Everything he says is pure gold, from his insults to his threats to his singing, and I'm noticing a pattern here. Sly 2 and 3 start in a European country with larger-than-life villains voiced by David Scully. Seems they found a winning formula, and wouldn't you know it, Dimitri's here too. What an introduction to the legend. And what a place to get introduced to the series' heist jobs, am I right? The high point, of course, being the opera duet with Bentley and Octavio. Always loved how Octavio sidesteps to Bentley, and Bentley's always looked like a confused old man when he bobs up and down. For the button presses here, you don't need perfect timing, so you know what that means. Instead of hearing something like this, you're probably gonna do something like this. this bit never fails to make me laugh, and I'm sure Bentley's final note is what sold me on Sly for life. The one bit that bothers me is how it comes in late in the Sly collection, but what else is new? For the other chapters, Holland is a nice midpoint. I love how everyone's trying to be respectful to each other during the Aces competition, but the minute everyone goes to bed, they're all sabotaging each other for the next day. The hotel lobbies are super cozy, even when you're trying to start a fight with somebody in there. Bentley's crack about Mugshot's mom is still the funniest thing ever. The one chapter I felt kinda dragged was General Tso's, but this one's pretty packed. It's got 3 unique areas, and the usual setup cutscene happens after doing a prologue with its own cutscene. We've also got turmoil with the Panda King and rescuing his daughter, fighting his inner demons and putting aside his grudge with Sly, Murray getting reunited with the Cooper van, which playing Sly 2 after this had me go, oh man, that's how they got separated? So much stuff. And General Tso, he was craftier than anyone gave him credit for. Dude found the safe house and straight up stole Bentley's computer, and you actually can't buy stuff during this bit. Like, did you ever think you'd see that happen? That leads to an awesome 2-parter of a boss fight, but even after you beat him, the chapter just keeps going. He is still determined to marry Jing King and unleashes vampires onto the palace grounds, and finally an ancestral dragon. Sometimes I forget all this happens in one chapter, but I guess it's kinda special like that. But dude, I gotta bring up Bloodbath Bay again. It's the last regular chapter and has so many great moments and characters, even down to singular grunts. This guy here is Stone Jake, and he's one of my favorites in the game. It's just his hatred of monkeys and his quips about them. Half of what he says has made it into my personal vocabulary of nonsense.
What? Be that monkeys?
I swear, the next time a Donkey Kong anything gets announced, I have to remember to say this.
Tricky monkeys?
By the end, this chapter goes full-on pirate simulator, where you can sail the seas and sink other ships or fight their captains for loot. It's no Sea of Thieves, but I recall getting a bit lost in this mode back in the day. Exploring Dagger Island and searching for treasure was great too, and I like the detail of pirate language used in the map hints. If you get stumped, the game just writes it out in plain English like it's going, okay, you've been at this for too long, we're not being cute anymore, just go here. I also want to bring up these alligator lizard guys. I think their code is unfinished. If they're hit with a sneak attack, they have no reaction, and if you kill them, they just stop moving. No cooldown animation, just maybe they were added in last minute or something, I don't know. Australia wasn't my favorite chapter when I was younger, but I think it's because that's where I started the game and I was getting used to everything all at once. I remember being so bad at the Aboriginal ball move during this bit, but it's a piece of cake now. Still, for every mission I didn't like, each chapter had something to look forward to, and for chapter 2, it's the mission Lemon Rage. This may just be the best mission in the game, and that seems to be the case for a lot of other Sly fans, and I think I know why. One, the music here is like nothing else in the game. Whether you're Australian or not, this is the song that plays when you and your buddies cause some good old-fashioned trouble. This bit doesn't take itself too seriously, and yet it shows off the Cooper gang dynamic so well. After the lemonade drinking contest goes sour, the bar erupts into a brawl, and you get to control the whole crew. Taking any damage is all part of the fun, everyone roots each other on with every blow dished out, and when the dingo boss rears his masked head, teamwork makes quick work out of him. You can't stop these guys. I think that's a good enough jumping off point to talk about some of the standout faces and the usual voiceover stuff. Sly is more expressive and enthusiastic here than ever, and hearing him retell his tales, he always gives off a cool older brother vibe. David Scully is a triple threat. Dimitri, Octavio, and Captain Lafouille, you could never do another voice role in your career and feel good about these 3 alone. I've always wanted to bring up Octavio's Song of Death, by the way. The move looks fine, but this deadly song is just Octavio going rah for 1 second. There's not even an echo or something to make it sound threatening, it's just a basic rah. Always found it hilarious. Penelope was another favorite. Crafty, caring, cute, and 50 different degrees of bonkers. Whether it's as the Black Baron or not, she's got no problem cheating in dogfights, killing her own guards to help Sly get to the finals, and if she's not completely helpless, she's a serious brawler and sword fighter. A perfect addition to the gang, and makes a cute couple with Bentley by the end of the game. And hoo boy, you better believe I have a few more things to say about her for the next video. Do I ever? And once again, Carmelita's got a new voice last to round things out, and this one's really good. Ruth Livier brings out her frustrated and flustered qualities, and that accent is to die for.
What happened to the demure girl I used to know?
She grew up and stopped taking grief from guys like you.
Are you saying I've got some competition for your affections?
You're the only man in my sights right now.
Fun fact, despite the voice change, some of her overworld grunts were carried over from Sly too, and the same goes for Murray too. Speaking of, Murray's voice is the perfect marriage of his last two voices, and he's just so excited about everything. He even drops the word freakin' on 2 separate occasions, which grabbed my attention the first time. This was the era where a lot of kids media started using words like freakin' and crap, and being the first Sly game to be rated E10, I guess Sucker Punch saw an opportunity and took it.
Like a freaking totem pole of strongism.
And Dr. M is a villain right on par with Clockwork for me. He may not be as terrifying, aside from his in-game model, but he's just as driven by hate, and I think it drove him to insanity much worse than it did Clockwork. First time you see him, he's asking how one of his minions' families are doing, then casually says he'll never see them again because he poisoned the guy for a simple mistake. It's still played for laughs, but you see all that and think, just who is this guy? And though a cold-hearted madman, there are times where you feel a bit sorry for him. He was a member of the original Cooper gang, but he goes on about how Sly's dad wasn't a great friend, and he's not above complimenting his enemies and even has respect for those he relates to, like Bentley. But then again, you hear him say things like, "I will feast on your eyeballs," and it snaps you right back into reality. His voice actor, the late great Rick May, gives a wonderful performance, and funnily, this is only the second time he's voiced a crazy primate scientist with ties to the player's dad. But for years, I didn't know he also voiced Peppy in Star Fox 64, and knowing that makes lines like these hilarious.
You're becoming more like your father.
You're as weak as your father.
Like, wow, Rick May hitting me from both sides of the coin. Also, the battery on Dr. M's head looks like a toaster with bread in it, and I hope you enjoy that visual as much as I do. So now, I want to talk about this game's ending. This final chapter is a roller coaster filled with high stakes, pauses for thought, and some real somber moments. It touches on subjects anyone can get behind, like living up to a legacy and brotherhood, and I've always felt that it does that so well. So many people think that just because something has goofy characters in it, it's automatically incapable of tackling serious subjects. Coming from personal experience, a game like Jak 2 tries to be taken seriously so badly, to the point where it backfires and just becomes ironically funny. Again, that's just me, I don't know about you, but I really don't like Jak 2 if you haven't noticed. Meanwhile, the game with a pink hippo and glasses-wearing turtle has me much more invested in its characters and their motives, and I think that's proof enough of good world building, storytelling, and all that other complex junk. So anyway, after trying to take down Dr. M a million times, Sly has one last face-off with him in the Cooper Vault. This is the best final fight in the series, and through it all, Dr. M is laughing at you and telling you to die. You don't want to give him that satisfaction. After landing the final blow, Carmelita comes in to arrest the two, and this gives the Doctor one last chance to make Sly suffer. Sly takes the shot for Carmelita, and in a great final send-off, Carmelita gets in the final hits on Dr. M. And when checking in on Sly, he seems to be suffering from amnesia. That gives Carmelita the chance to say, "Oh yeah, we've been partners this whole time, so let's get out of here, partner." This ending really upset me the first time. I knew Carmelita and Sly had a thing for each other, but I felt she was being so selfish, and when I found out Sly was faking it, I thought, dude, you left behind your friends and had them worry about you just so you could get with some chick? I mean, it's kinda sweet, but like, after all you guys have been through, like, why? But as you get to know Sly throughout the series, you know this is something he would do. Sly's unpredictable, he does things at the drop of a hat, and as frustrating as that can be, his friends understand that's just what he does. A part of him just wanted to take things easy and get with the lady he's loved from afar. And the best part is, he didn't have to confess his love at all. I'm sure at that moment he thought, man, I made out like a bandit. Seeing everyone go their separate ways after Sly disappeared, it hit way too close to home for me when I was in the 6th grade. It was like real life where people you may have been super close close with just part ways for one reason or another. And in other ways, even if you have a buddy who's halfway across the world, you still keep in contact with them and check in to see how they're doing. I've noticed that with PlayStation trilogies, when a developer knows they're never touching a series again, they squeeze in as much as possible for their last game, sometimes adding stuff people weren't really asking for. For Sly 3, this is the multiplayer mode, and it's not too bad. I remember playing a fair bit of the cops and robbers mode and dipped my toe in the dogfights and the ship battles. The hacking mode, I don't think I ever played through though. Then there were those segments with the 3D glasses, or as Bentley calls them, optimizer goggles. This was the first time I ever saw a video game do this, and you know what? I thought it was a pretty fun idea. My current PS2 copy has a pair that's unassembled, and I don't know what to do with them. Do I leave them as is? Do I put them together, or what? For other extras, they went above and beyond, and I'm happy to say the Sly collection keeps it all. When you beat a chapter, you unlock its concept art, and it's always cool seeing original sketches and stuff left on the cutting room floor. I also have to give praise for the fact that you can zoom in on the art. You wouldn't believe how many games don't let you do this, even in more recent times. If you manage to get far enough in completion, you unlock those Goodbye My Sweet shorts, which are super charming. Always thought this felt like a straight up episode of a Sly Cooper cartoon. And one more delve into Sucker Punch's development on Sly 2 and 1, with the latter going as far back as I think they possibly could. How many devs let you see this much stuff in the game that you bought? This is mind-blowing, man! And if you get everything, you get Dimitri's music video, the greatest thing to ever grace our planet. I can't stress how great a package Sly 3 is. I feel like it tried to leave nothing undone and tie up all the loose ends a fan could ever want. Though sadly, this game was probably the most hastily put together for the collection. Every cutscene that has those black bars never reach the end of the screen, and it is the worst thing ever. It wasn't like that for the other two games, so I just ask why? The boss fight with Mugshot also has its music completely missing, and that is so annoying. And because there's no music, I now know that Mugshot uses grunts from Jean Bisson in this boss fight. And this nitpick applies to all versions really, and that's the jingle when you complete a job. It sounds like the start of Sly 2's jingle, but then it just cuts out early. I always thought instead of sounding like this, it should have sounded like this. Anyone else agree? I really hope my love and passion for Sly 3 has shown. This is not only a great game, but makes for a great bookend to the original Sly Cooper story. Everyone grew as people, no cliffhangers, no one died, and everybody was doing what made them happiest. That said, I would have liked to have seen Sly again in a new adventure if someone was willing to bring him back, and maybe follow up on Bentley's time machine idea? Well, if you know Sly, you know that is exactly what happened. So be sure to tune in next time when we talk about Sly 4 Thieves in Time, as the Cooper Marathon continues. Hey there guys, thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, feel free to give this video a like, share with a friend, subscribe, check out my social media pages, Patreon page, you can ring the bell for notifications if you really want to, all that stuff that I always ramble on about at the end. And what do you guys think of Sly 3 if you've played it? What are some of your favorite memories with the game, your favorite characters, your favorite chapters, villains, anything you thought that this game could have done better, or anything that Sly 2 did better? Sound off in the comments below, I'd love to read them. And while you're here, why don't you check out the videos I got on screen? I really enjoyed making them, hopefully you'll enjoy watching them. And if you already watched them, hopefully you'll enjoy watching them again. And with all that said, I will see you guys next time. I already made that pun in my Crash 4 video, but whatever. Later!